Hi and welcome back to the third part of CSS Cascading Style Sheet. This time, we will try to write CSS external style. To begin writing our external style sheet, let's define our new site by going to the Site menu, New Site. From this window, we will write here external CSS, and then from the local site folder, we will define the folder that I have created on my desktop, and the name of that folder is CSS. Then let's click the Select folder, then save the changes, and then from our root folder, let's create a new index file. Okay, there you go. And then let's create another folder, right click, new folder, and then we will name this folder CSS. So this folder will contain our external CSS. Okay, so let's open our index.html, and then we will copy the examples that we had on our previous video about internal styling. So I already have that. So let's paste it between the body tag. Okay, there you go. And then let's preview this in our browser. This is also the example that we used for our part 1 video and part 2 video. So again, we will apply styles to make this page elegant and attractive. So let's go back to our Dreamweaver and start writing our external style sheet. Inside of our CSS folder, right click on that folder and then create a new file, and then we will name this main.css. Then let's open this file, and then from here we will define the rules for our external style sheet. The first thing that we want to have is to apply style for our h1. So let's write here h1, and we want our h1 to have a green color with a font family of Century Gothic. And then we want also to make styles for our h2, and again we want our h2 to have orange color, and the font family is also a Gothic. Okay, so there you go. So now, after writing these two CSS rules, the h1 selector and the h2 selector, let's go back to our index.html and have a look of what will be the effect of our main.css external style sheet to our index.html. So let's preview this in our browser, then reload. Okay, so as you can see, there is no effect because we haven't created a link yet from our index.html going to the CSS external style sheet. So to create a link between the head tag, let's write here link href and then browse. Then from this folder, open the CSS folder, which contains our external CSS file, and then select the main.css and then click OK. And then we have to add another attribute. This is a very important attribute, the rel attribute, and then indicate here that this is a style sheet. And then the last one is the media. We will state here that this media will be set to all. So there you go. Then let's go back to our browser and then let's reload the page. So there you have it. We were able to see the changes that we've made from our external style sheet after linking it to our HTML document. Okay, so let's add more styles. Let's go to our Dreamweaver and go to our main.css, and let's define another rule for our paragraph. Let's write here P, and then we will state here that the font family is Segoy UI, and the font size is 1.2 em, and the line height is also 1.2 em. Save the changes, go to our browser, and then reload. Okay, there you go. As you can see here, there are parts in our page that some text were not affected by our style. Remember that this portion here, these are not paragraphs. These are unordered and ordered list. Let's try also targeting this element in our main.css. Let's go back to our Dreamweaver. Just within the line of our paragraph, let's write here comma, and then let's add the ul, li, and then comma, ol, li. Save the changes, go back to our browser, and then let's reload. There you go. So what is the meaning of paragraph, comma, ulli, and comma, olli? So this means that the paragraph together with the li inside the ul and then the li inside the ol will have a style, a font family of Sego UI and a font size of 1.2 and a line height of 1.2. So that is the meaning of that. Okay, so let's continue. So this time we'll add another selector, which is called the class selector. So aside from these HTML selectors that we have used, these tags here, we will use also the class selector. We have already used the class selector in our part 2 video, so I guess you are already familiar with the class selector. So let's go to our index.html, and then on the note section here, let's write here class, and then let's write note. And then we have another note here. Again, we will add here class, and then write the name note. And then let's save the changes and then go back to our main.css. Then at the bottom of our paragraph selector, let's add here dot note to target the element that has a class name note. Then we will state here that this element will contain a border at the top with 1 pixel size, and it will be a straight line, and the color of that border is green. We will also add a border at the bottom, and we will adjust the width of this element to 50% of the width of the page. And then we will center this to our page. So that is why we are going to set the margin left to auto and then margin right to auto. Okay, so there you go. Okay, then another thing, we are going to change the font of this element to normal, and then it will be an Arial narrow, and then it will be 0.8 em. So let's preview this in our browser, then let's reload. Okay, so there you go. So there is a mistake on how we use the shorthand property of font. So let's go back to our Dreamweaver and let's fix this. So what we can do is to switch this 0.8 em and place it somewhere here. And then let's save the changes, go back to our browser, and then reload. Okay, so there you go. Okay, so I guess our note content is too small for us to see and read. So let's change that. Let's go back to our Dreamweaver and then change the font size into, let's say, 1 em, and then change the color into red. And then text align is justify. Okay, save the changes and then reload the browser. Okay, so there you go. That's it. So let's go back to our Dreamweaver and explain everything what we did here. So the first thing that we did is we created a folder, and then inside of our CSS folder, we created a new file, and the name of that file is main.css. This main.css is what we call the external style sheet. And then we wrote some CSS rules inside of it using the selector for HTML tags, just like the h1, h2, p, unordered list, li, ordered list, li. And then we also added class, which is called note, and assigned that class to our paragraph that contains the note. Okay. And then after that, we defined the rules for styles, such as the following styles: the border, the width, the margin, the shorthand notation for font, the color, and the text alignment. Okay. So before we end, let's add one more thing here. Let's add an ID selector at the maximum number of computers available for student. Let's add here ID and then let's say rooms. Then after defining the name of the ID, we will target this element containing this name of ID in our main.css. And to do that, the prefix is the pound sign, followed by the name of the ID. And then inside of this block, we will define the rules for our styles. We want to add a text decoration, and that text decoration is an underline. And then we want to change the font of this. Let's say I want it to be bold, and I want it to be 1EM, and the font family is, let's say, Tahoma. So let's go to the browser and let's reload the page. Okay, so it did not work. So let's go back again to the Dreamweaver and let's see what the problems are. Okay, so let's go to our index.html. Rooms. So the name is rooms. The name of our ID is rooms. So let's go back to our main.css and let's add s to this. Let's save, then go to our browser, then reload. There you go. So it added the styles that we have defined in our main.css external style sheet. Okay, now this is just a point to remember, which is very important. Once you define an ID selector, just like in our case, we have defined here an ID, and the name of that ID is room, then you cannot reuse the same ID name. Let's say on this part, we want to add an ID with the name rooms. So this is not acceptable because an ID should only appear once in a page. If you want to have an ID, it should be different. So let's say we want to have special room. Okay, so this is legal because rooms is different from special room. But if I'm going to make these rooms, then I have identical ID names, and that is not allowed. So what we did here is we defined our CSS rules using the HTML tag selectors, and then the class selector, and lastly, the ID selector. And for this style to take effect on the page, you have to add a link between the head tag. So the HTML tag that you have to add is the link tag. Link followed by the href and then the location of your external style sheet followed by the definition of the style sheet. This is rel equals to style sheet. And then the type of media that your user will be using to view this page. And we set this to all. So that's all for this video and see you in the next lessons.